you. That was the cleanest, neatest. I believe that was as clean a hotel as I've ever been in my whole lifetime. I've been in some high-priced ones, and I think that one was just about as neat and clean, and the sheets were pretty and white and clean, and there wasn't a wrinkle in the bed or nothing when we got it that night, and the pillows were soft, and the mattress was nice, and I'll tell you, I just slept that morning. I must have slept till 9 or 9:30. And he woke me up to tell me goodbye. And he had been up and he took a shower and he changed his clothes and he had on a real nice clothes and he was a nice looking guy and he had his hair all combed and pretty and everything. And I thought so much of him for what he did. He could have just walked out on me or whatever. And I'd never known but what he was just another bum like me. So anyway, he woke me up to tell me goodbye and how much he appreciated being, sharing with me and everything. And I just appreciated it a whole big bunch. And I was real sorry about my feelings because I was afraid he might rob me or something, but I didn't know much else to do anyhow. So anyhow, I got back on the train and as I got cleaned up, I didn't have any extra clothes, but I cleaned up anyhow and put on my clothes and took off and went ahead and rode the train. So I kept what little money I had and I got back home to Elk City there. When I got back to Elk City, the folks had moved. They moved to another place, and neighbors were new, and everything was new, and they'd met some new ones. And my sister had met a boyfriend she liked, and so I got acquainted with them, and we had a pretty good time there. In fact, I had met them before, but I didn't really know them or anything before I went away. So anyhow, I wasn't going to stay still. I just had to see more of the country, I guess. I wasn't going to be still. I hadn't settled down yet, and I wasn't going to stay around. So the folks, they decided to go too. I mean, they wasn't farming with anybody or whatever where they'd moved to, and so they decided to go. I was going to go back east a ways there, back into Oklahoma, into eastern Oklahoma. And this was Elk City, Oklahoma. And I was going to go back farther east, and they decided to go too. And so that way I'd stay home. So if they went, I guess they thought, and we could kind of all be together. And which don't hardly blame me in a way, but then you can't give over to your kids or something. But they wasn't doing anything where they were, and so we decided maybe we'd go and work harvesters. We'd talked with lots of people before, and known people that made potato picking in Fort Gibson, and they'd made the strawberries down in Missouri and or in eastern Oklahoma and whatever, and made a fair living and seen the country as they went along. Now, it's not a bad thing, and people that never been out on the road or anything think it's a terrible thing, but it's not bad at all because people just don't worry about things. Anyway, we went to on down the line, and my stepfather had some folks down there, and so he had a brother that lived, it was his half-brother that lived by Claremore, Oklahoma, and now out west of Claremore there on the Verdigris River. His wife was an Indian, and he was maybe a little bit Indian, I don't know, but his wife was Indian, so she had some property out there, and what they would do, they'd sell off a little piece of property, and then just maybe an acre or so, and then they'd eat it up, and when ate up that acre, they'd sell another ones. Eventually, and in years to come, they didn't have any property left, so, but they lived off of it. So anyway, I didn't know any people down there, and now now I'm almost 18 years old, and it's I think I don't remember now. April, I guess, time we got down there to their place was April. Now, and his brother had two daughters, and one had a boyfriend there, and the other one, well, I liked that one daughter real well. I just thought she was about it. So anyhow, when I was there for a little bit, I was really thought a lot of her, but I didn't make much headway with her or anything, and so I just went along. We didn't stay there very long, but when we left there, they went with us, and they had a truck, and we had the truck and whatever there, and we went on down. Well, before we left there, though, and before they even decided to go, I decided that I'd go to school. Because she was going to school, and I thought I'll just go back to school. And so I was like I was going to be 18 pretty soon. I mean, in June I was going to be 18, and so, but I thought I'd go back to school now. When I had only went to school in the third grade, and I went to the school, we traveled around a lot, and I'd go to church school in third grade, and I'd just you'd kind of eat that third grade up, and then when I'd move and go to another place, I was afraid I couldn't take the fourth, so I'd go back and tell them I was in the third, and I'd go back in the third again. I kept doing that, and then finally quit going to school at all. But I thought, now I'll just go back to school, and I started, and I knew the teacher. In fact, the teacher was born and raised right there, and my mama's sister and her husband lived right there, neighbors to her daddy and mama, and so I knew her when she was a baby, or when she was a little girl, and she was younger, about my age, I guess. And so I remember me and my cousin aggravating them a lot and everything, and I guess she remembered that too. So when I went to school, I never made no hit with her at all, because she kind of resented me being there. And all of her class was small. See, when I went back to school, I went in the third grade. I didn't tell them I was promoted to the fourth, so I went in the third grade, and she was teaching probably up to about the fourth and there, and so it was a little country school. Anyway, it only lasted 2 weeks. I seen that wasn't going to work anyway, so I stopped that. And then when we took off, we all took off together, and there I seen her, every day, every day I seen her. And but I could have maybe made a headway with her, but her mother, that Indian woman, she didn't like me at all. So that was a big conflict and whatever. So anyhow, we went on down, and we stopped we went to Wyandotte first. Now that wasn't very far from Claremore. Wyandotte isn't very far. We went to Wyandotte, Oklahoma, and we picked strawberries there for a while. And one of my cousins from Arkansas, he found out where it was at, and he came out there for a little while. And Raymond Lander's his name. That was his folks that lived there by Claremore also, that his mother died there, and my mom was there with her. That's how come me to be down there that one time. And so he come up there and stayed with us a week or so, and I remember everybody liked him, and we got attached to him and whatever. And then he stayed, I think, about 2 weeks and picked strawberries with us, and then he went on back home. And when he went back home, he went on a train, and we went down to the train to see him off, and I remember everybody cried. I think everybody cried. I don't know about our parents, but all the kids, I think we cried when he took off because we just hate to see him go. And you know, when somebody's going like that, especially on a train, and that old train has that old lonesome boy whistle out there, and it just upsets the whole apple cart. So we seen him off, and then we went on down, and we went into Missouri. We stopped around the old show, and we picked some strawberries there, and then we moved on in, and we wound up down at Butterfield. Now, my stepdad there was a people down there that his sister had told him that man, Jim McGuire, was his daddy. They see, he never knew his daddy in his whole life up to then, and he was about 45, I guess, 50 years old, maybe older than that at the time. So he had never seen his daddy, and so, but his sister told him that was his father. And so we went down there and to Butterfield, and they got in contact with this party and everything. And the wife of that man was all upset. She was real upset. They had a family there, and they, 2 or 3 kids, and where they had one adopted boy and a boy and a girl of their own. And so my stepdad, he liked them and they liked him, but the woman was kind of upset at first because she had known before that Jim McGuire had lived with his mother for a while, and so that was just upsetting the apple cart. But she got over that, and everything kind of settled down, and we visited with them for a while and picked strawberries and went on. And while we was picking the strawberries there, one time I seen this truck go by. It was a little Model T with a little bed on the back, and it was a man and a woman in the car, and they was driving the car by these people's house, and so there was a girl sitting up in the back. Now, he had a stack of feed right up behind the seat there, and this girl was sitting on them sacks of feed, and had her back to the travel. She was sitting backwards, and I seen her go by, and I asked this girl, her name was Mamie, and I said, "Who's that?" And she told me who it was. I said, "That's Arthur Lansdowne, and that's his sister that's riding in there." So I didn't meet her or anything. I just seen her there, and we went on. We left there in a few days, and we went on down. We went to Fort Gibson, or Fort Gibson, yeah, it's Oklahoma, I guess. Anyway, we went down to Fort Gibson to pick up potatoes, and it started raining, and it rained and rained and rained, and the potatoes rotted in the ground. In fact, they were too rotten to pick. We could go out and get all we wanted to eat, and that's what we ate, potatoes. And we got a little bit of lard. In fact, we stayed there so long that we run out of money waiting on the potatoes, and then when they found they wasn't even going to dig them, so we wasn't any money to get. There was no money to get at all. Some guy there, some man that had a lot of money, I don't know who he was, God bless him, he had a lot of money, and he gave every person in that everywhere there that was there and stranded, he gave them 10 gallons of gas and a bill of groceries. 10 gallons of gas and a bill of groceries so they could get somewhere. And so we did it. We took it, and we all did, and we took out, and we went from there. I don't even know the town or anywhere where we went at the time. I can't remember any of them, but after we traveled a couple of days, we stopped at this little place, and we camped kind of in a little park just below the town, and it wasn't down in a hole or anything, but it was below the town, and it was still rainy, and it come a rain, and within it was warm weather, and you just get out in the rain sometimes, and it was raining. I went uptown just messing around, and it was just pouring down rain. Nobody ever believed this. I told lots of people about it, and I don't think any of them ever believed it. But I went uptown, and there was no water running through the town. Now it wasn't no creek run through the town or anything, but it just poured. I mean, it just really poured down. And when it slacked up a little, there was little fish all over the street. There was no pavement. It was just gravel street. There was little fish, little perches and whatever all over the street. So when I tell people it rained fish right out of the sky, they just kind of laugh. And some of them just grinned. They wouldn't even laugh. But anyway. It did happen when I was there. So we moved on from there. Right offhand, I can't tell you where we went. I might think of it some other time, but I know we moved on. And in the fall, but when fall came, I know where we was at. I know where we went from there. We went on up to Doyle, Oklahoma. That's where we had lived when I was young there. I told you about that earlier in some of the tapes. We went back up to Doyle, and there was quite a few people there we knew, and I know we camped there a long while, and we worked in the broom corn. We got that for, and we worked in the broom corn. My stepdad was a guy that could get any place almost, and if he didn't have any money and he didn't have any way to get something to eat, or if he didn't have whatever he was trying to get, he'd borrow it from somebody on the street, and he'd tell them, I'll pay you so-and-so now. And he would. He'd pay him back. If he had to borrow it from another guy, he'd pay it back, and I don't suppose he ever had a debt he didn't pay, and whatever. But anyway, he went... We worked in the broom corn and whatever there, and I remember that this girl's daddy would get drunk, and every time he'd get drunk, he'd want to fight me, and I never did offer to fight him, and he'd scare me to death, and he was, I don't know, as far as I was concerned, he was dangerous. Anyway, he'd tell me what he thought of me and whatever there, and well, it went on and went on, and I didn't. I thought a lot of his girl, but I didn't pay too much attention to her, especially when he was around, or when his wife was around or anything. And then the kids, they'd tell if they know that we talked or anything, they'd tell the parents, and so it was a big old hassle, and it was rough on me, I tell you. So we went on there, and when we left there, we wound up. Now I don't even know what directions we went from there. I can't remember that, but we went from there out to Paducah, Texas again. We went out there, and we worked for those Moffats. Earlier in my tapes, I told you about going to the Moffats and out there in the covered wagon. And we went to the Moffats this time in our truck, and we worked in the cotton out there. And one thing I remember, one of my sisters, actually, she was my stepsister, also she was my cousin. Anyhow, she found a $20 bill in the cotton patch on the second picking there, and I remember that. The $20 bill was worth probably $100 now, $150. Anyhow, they because things were so much different. Anyhow, she found that. But we worked along there now, and by this time, I was claiming this girl, and she was claiming me as her boyfriend, but we we couldn't, we wanted to get married real bad, and we tried to get married, but the parents wouldn't give her up. I'd ask for her and everything, and the parents, they just simply would not. And so we tried every scheme we knowed of to get them in a notion, but there's no way. And we talked about running off and whatever, but of course, somebody didn't have money to run off with. We didn't run off. Anyway, when we went on to, well, let's see, we worked there for quite a while, and the boy there, one of the Moffat boys, the younger one, he was trying to make a hit with the girl at the same time. He was trying to make a hit with her, and he was, I don't know, I guess he wasn't doing much good at it, but sometimes I would worry a little bit and whatever. But the girl she was awful friendly and talky and everything, and she talked with him a lot. And so that bothered me some because I didn't know for sure. But anyway, he was a boxer and he wanted to box. He always wanted to box with me. So he kept on trying to box with me and wanted to spar. And I told him, well, I can't box. I don't know anything about boxing. I wouldn't want to put on boxing gloves. And he just keep on trying to get me to do that. And I told him, no, I don't want to do that. So he finally, one day I decided, well, I guess I might as well. He ain't going to ever give up. And he promised not to hurt me. Now, he said he'd just spar with me. And so we put the gloves on, and there was good gloves. He was boxed all the time. And so he told me he'd just spar with me. And so we put the gloves on, and we got the gloves on and everything, and we started to boxing out, and everybody was standing around there, my stepfather and whoever, and the girl was there too. And I kind of thought maybe he just kind of wanted to get rid of me or wanted to scare me out or something. And so I thought, well, maybe since he promised that he wouldn't really box, that I could spar with him, and give him a little practice maybe or something, and maybe I could learn. Anyhow, when we put the gloves on, we tapped a few times at each other, and I didn't know anything about. I'd fought a little bit, but I never did box or nothing like that, and so I didn't know what to do. Anyhow. He got a haymaker in there and he hit me up beside the head there, and boy, just below the temple there, and in the cheek, just below the temple, I seen stars. I went down, I crawled around a while, got up, come back. I could see he wasn't sorry for what he'd done. I could see that he was waiting for me when I got up. Got back over there, and I don't know, like I said, I fought a little, but I mostly run. I was pretty much of a coward anyway when it come to fighting, but I had fought some. Anyway, I went back to him, so I seen he wasn't sparring. I didn't spar either. I went back to him, and I got in a good lick with one of the hands. I don't know if it was right or left, but I got in a good lick with the right or left one. I don't know which one it was. I stayed in there for another second or two, and I got another one. I guess I surprised him because I didn't know how to box, and I surprised him, I guess. I got another one in with the other hand, and when it was all over, well, we stopped then. He stopped. He started turning white. He turned real pale there and got real sick at his stomach. We just stopped when I just hit him 2 licks. He hit me 1, I hit him 2. Anyway, I seen that he wasn't fighting anymore, so I stopped. I didn't try to hit him anymore. and he got real sick at his stomach, and threw up there, or tried to throw up or whatever. He went back to his house. He just lived right there close. We was almost in their yard there, living in one of their workhouses, and so he went back to the house, and they took him in to the doctor there, and that right away they just grabbed him up and took him right on into the doctor, and nobody done nothing to me, but they took him on into the doctor, and they got his hand reset there. He hit me so hard with gloves on that he knocked his whole right hand down, all of his knuckles, but I guess the one there, and it it was terrible, I guess, because he didn't. He still. We left there about 2 or 3 weeks later, and he still had that arm in a sling. He was still going back to the doctor with it, and what happened to me there was that I guess I just broke those knuckles, or banged up my knuckles on my. I don't know which finger you'd call it there, but it's the middle one, counting the thumb, and on both hands, and so I messed them up, and then the knuckle out on the end, and the knuckle back behind it, and the knuckle on my next finger there, ruined the knuckle on one of them. Well, I don't know if I done that on one of them or not, but anyway, I've always had lots of pain in those hands every once in a while, weather changes and whatever. But that was the end of that. After we left there, we went on, things went along. There, the family went back, and I don't remember just what happened, but I'm sure we stopped off in Elk City, Oklahoma, when they were heading back towards their place there, and they went on home. They still had their place back there, and they went back there, and we went back to the old Moore place, and got back on there as sharecroppers again. So then from there, I don't know just what happened for a while, but anyway, I know one time we went back to visit he wanted to visit, my stepfather wanted to visit his folks back there in Missouri, and it wasn't a big long trip, about over 300 miles, but he wanted to go back there and visit his folks, and so he went back there. Of course, I always went with him, and I don't remember now if the whole family went, or part of us, I guess, went, maybe one of the girls or so, or two. Anyhow, we went by there, by his brother's place, where the girl was that I cared about a lot. So I had wrote to her all the time. I was writing to her all the time. We went by there. But she'd always tease me, I guess, or else maybe it was so. I don't know what was going on, but she'd always tell me about some guy, first one and another. She'd tell me about seeing him, and talking with him and having a lot of fun and all that stuff. And it was kind of upsetting me, so I went on, and we went back there on into Missouri, and we visited there. And so I know I somehow or another, I made a date with my stepdad's sister, and was going to take her to church that night. Well, one of my wife's cousins lived down on the other side of her and had to come right by her place to go to church, and they were good friends. And so, my wife that I married later. Anyway, when I went back to, or when I was going to go on the date that night, this gal, I guess they communicated somehow. I don't know how, but somehow or another, this gal got there just exactly at the right time that I was going to take her to church. So, and we were going to walk. It's only a little over a quarter of a mile down there. And we started to go, and we just went out the door and out towards the gate, and there she was. She was waiting out there, and she was quite a kidder too. Her name was Vesty. I can't remember her last name right now, but Oh, Terry, her last name was Terry. She was my wife's cousin. I told you that before. Anyway, uh, what they did, it wasn't a date. It was a mess. And was walking along, and they just kind of communicated to each other, and they laughed and they giggled all the way down to the church. Well, here I was holding her arm, but she was communicating with the other gal. And I thought they were making fun of me. I didn't really know if they was making fun of me or not. They probably weren't making fun of me, but they was making me plenty mad anyhow. We got down to church and we went in church and I sat down by them. We went in about the middle of the church and on the one side of the aisle, just had an aisle down the middle. So the other girl got in there in the seat first, and then the girl that I had the date with, she got in there next, and then me, and we sitting there, and all the time in church they whispered to each other and giggled and all that stuff. And there's quite a lot of young people there at the church that night, and so well, I was pretty well fed up with it, and I didn't know what to do. And I looked over there in that other aisle, and there was that girl I seen riding on that feed sack. Riding on that feed sack that time, several months before that, in her brother's pickup. And she's sitting over there kind of smiling at me, or smiling. I don't know if she's smiling at me. But every time I looked over there, she looked pleasant anyway. She smiled back. So I just, when they dismissed, these two were still giggling and whatever, carrying on. I just got up and walked over there and said, how about taking you home? And she said, okay. So I took her home. Well, this other girl's, the girl that come with that one that I had a date with, her brother was there, and he had to tell me that you better watch it. That old lady will be standing at the door with a shotgun when you get there. And said when she comes to the door with a shotgun, she said, well, you better get out of there. He was a big kidder. He left a kid, and he's dead now. He's lived a long time there, but he's dead. Anyway, he pumped me up real good there, and he didn't really scare me, but I guess I was scared too, but I didn't show it. Anyhow, we went on. We walked down there, and well, we just walked along there and talked a little bit. I'd never met her before and talked to her or anything. That was the first time I ever talked to her. I'd just seen her go by and pick up. So we talked a little bit, and I don't remember. I think I did make a date with her, or ask her if I could take her somewhere, church somewhere, another day or two later, or somewhere. There was a place that was going to have church, and I asked her if I could take her, and she told me she'd go. And so before we got to that was before we got to the house, and when we got to the house, we walked up there and walked up to the door, and I was just standing there talking to her, just for probably 2 seconds or something like that. When we stopped, just about time we stopped, her mom said, Lorraine, it's time for you to get in here. And boy, I figured there's the shotgun. Well, there was no shotgun, but she was kind of cranky for some reason. She didn't have good health. She wasn't very healthy, and she wasn't feeling too good. And I guess she didn't want anybody talking to her daughter, because her daughter was a lot of help to them. And she was pretty old. The daughter was the youngest one in the family, and the parents were getting pretty old. So I guess she just didn't want anybody around or whatever. So I went on about my business. But I did go back and got a date with her. I had a date with her, and we went to church and whatever. I don't remember now. I actually don't remember that time right that trip, whether I took her out anywhere else or not. Maybe I didn't get to her what, but I was back down there another time after we went back home. I wrote to her though all the time. After that, after I had the date with her, I wrote to her all the time, and I was writing to the other girl at the same time. So the next year, we went back down there. My stepdad had to make the trip down there, and so I went along. And well, I didn't know for sure what was going to do, and I know I cared an awful lot about the other girl, and I thought this girl, this one there in Missouri, I figured this girl is the one that a person would need to marry if he's going to have a family and have a good life. And the other one, I knew I thought a lot of her, but I just figured, well, maybe she wouldn't be the kind that I could communicate with or whatever. So anyhow, when I went down, I decided after I got down there that well, I'd already asked her in the letter if she would marry me. So when I went by there, I had already broke off with the other girl. My stepdad stopped at his folks' place, and I'd already broke off with her, and she tried to make up with me again and everything, and I wouldn't do it. And but we went on into Missouri, and we was down there a week or two, I guess, or something like that. And so finally, she decided that we would get married. I was asking her several times, and she finally decided that, well, we'll get married. So we decided to get married, and then we asked the old man. We asked him first before we did the mother. The same thing, the mother first. We asked the old man. Well, I think we did ask the mother, and she said she would. So I think that's the way it was. We did ask her first or something. Anyway, she agreed, and so then her daddy, he just didn't want to give her up at all. He was a nice guy. He was a really nice guy, but he didn't have nothing against me. He just didn't want to give up his daughter. Because I lived in Oklahoma, and they know that when I got married, we wouldn't be staying there, not for a long time anyway. So we went on. We went. He wouldn't go with us to get married, so we went at the courthouse up in Cashville, Missouri. There, it's about 6 or 8 miles, and we went up there, and everybody up there knew him. Everybody in town knew him. Everybody in the country knew him. He was born and raised there, and you know it's country there, so everybody knows everybody. Even the judge, when we went in there to get married, the judge wouldn't marry us. He told us, he said, "You can't do that." Said the girls got to be 21 here in Missouri to get married. Now I know they didn't have to be 21 to get married, but I didn't have no way of proving it. And he somehow or another he got the idea that Emmett would have been there. That's her daddy's name. That Emmett would have been there if he was willing for us to get married. So he wouldn't marry us, and we had to go back. And we went back, and we tried to talk to her daddy into going up there with us. And it took a couple of days. We finally did, and he went around to all the kids and told them that it was going to kill Mom and all that stuff. And it was killing him, not Mom. It wouldn't hurt Mom, I don't think. Anyhow, we went and got married there, and we come back, and money was something. I didn't have any money. My stepdad had some money. He didn't have much more than enough to get home on, probably about enough to get home on. We had an old Baby Olin touring car we'd come down there in. And so he was, I done all the driving and everything, and that's why I was always long wherever he went, so I done the driving. Anyhow, when we got married, we just stayed there a couple of days, or 3 days, I guess. Well, first that night, when we first got married, that night that we got married, uh, we got back and we didn't go anywhere. We just stayed there at their house, and it was a little house. They didn't have very much room, I know. And we kind of, in fact, it was like the living room actually, and had two beds in there, and had one in each corner of the room. And the parents used one of the rooms. We used the other one. But before the first part of it, it surprised me. We knew that the people, they had the custom of chivalrying you and all that stuff, and coming in making a lot of noise and all that, whatever. And so we went to and got some candy. My wife had $4, I think it was, and I don't think I had any money. My stepfather had some, for us to get home on. And I had a crop out there, sharecropping. I was sharecropping, so I didn't have cash. That's the way it was, and so we went up there. I had enough money to get the license and all that and get married, but I didn't have any left. So my wife had $4, and she got $4 worth of treats, candy, and first one thing another. Back then, you could get quite a lot of candy for $4. It just wasn't that high. So she bought the candy and stuff, and we knew there would be a few people around, and I knew she had some kinfolks that would be there. And quite a few came. There must have been 30 or 40 people came, and the candy, it went around, I think. People that wanted it anyway got some, and everything was going along good, and it was just about over, and they were, they didn't say anything about riding me on the pole or nothing like that, and we were just getting along fine there. All of a sudden, we heard a whole bunch of noise coming up the canyon there, and up one of these old rocky roads, and it has just flint rocks out there. It just had flint rock roads and had no paved roads, but they'd hold you up for sure, but they were rough. And we heard lots of noise coming, and it was a group of people walking. There was more coming on that group than there was the first group. So the first part of the chivalries, they was coming, and they was coming for blood, I guess. But she knew them all. They all knew her anyway, and they were coming. There, they was just late. That's all that happened, and they wanted treats, and they was going to ride me on the pole and all. And everybody done a lot of talking. The people that was already there done a lot of talking to keep them from riding me on the pole. So they had no treats for them, whatever. But it turned out well, and we all had a good time that night. Boy, I'll never forget it. Having to sleep in the same room with the parents that night. Anyway, we was there a couple of days, and we took off in that baby Overland. We got part way home. It was only about, like I said, 350 miles or something. We got probably about halfway, and we burned the rod out. We burned the rod out of that, and we took the pan down right out on the road. Right out on the road, we took the pan down. We didn't have money for no motel, no hotel, no nothing. And we took that rod down, and we worked on it, and we put it back up, and it come out. It went out again. We put shoe leather in it and whatever. We got quite a ways up the road. And, we got about 2/3 of the way home, I guess. I remember it pouring down rain at night, and after we worked on the car and didn't get it fixed, it poured down rain all night, and we all slept in that car. It was, like I said, a baby Overland, and there was my two sisters and my stepfather and me and my wife. That was 5 of us. We was 5 of us in that car, and we slept in that car. We slept in that car the whole trip. It was raining. You couldn't sleep out on the ground or nothing. And so we just sat in that car and sleep. And I'll tell you, that was some honeymoon, I'll believe you. But I don't know. some people had a lot better honeymoon, but we've had a pretty good life. With on top of everything else, I guess we just had real good. The Lord's really been good to us. Anyway, we got home. Well, we didn't. We got up the road a ways, quite a ways. We was about 2/3 of the way home, I guess, and finally we just broke down and again, and we just went in and went to a station, and wired for a telegram. We wired into the home place there and had them send us enough money to buy a new rod, and we bought a new rod, and I put it in there, and we took off, and we got on home. We got on home, and boy, that was something. And then Frank Morris, I didn't have a house of my own. We stayed with Mom and him for a few days, and then Frank let us use a room upstairs in the house that he lived in. Nobody ever used it, and so we had to go in his front door and then upstairs